China built more railroad in Africa in 20 years than Europe did in 100. But look closely at where the tracks go and where they don't. Since 2000, China has invested over $1 trillion across 140 countries through what it calls the Belt and Road Initiative, a global infrastructure program the scale of which the world has never seen. In Africa alone, Chinese firms have built or financed over 10,000 kilometers of railroad, 100,000 kilometers of road, and dozens of major ports in just 2 decades. The numbers are genuinely staggering. And for a continent where colonial-era infrastructure left most countries without functioning rail networks, you might assume this was simply good news. Development, progress, a partner willing to build what Western nations refuse to finance. Or maybe the question isn't whether China is building. The question is, what is building and why? $60 billion Chinese infrastructure investment in East Africa alone between 2000 to 2023. Let's look at 2 specific railroads because they tell you everything. The first is Kenya's Standard Gauge Railway, the SGR. Completed in 2017, it runs 472 kilometers from the port of Mombasa inland to Nairobi. Cost, $3.2 billion. Financed almost entirely by China's Export-Import Bank. Built almost entirely by Chinese state-owned construction companies. Operated, to this day, by a Chinese firm. Kenyans celebrated it. It was the largest infrastructure project in the country since independence. And it is, genuinely, a functioning railroad that moves people and goods faster than the road ever did. But here is what the celebration coverage left out: the loan terms. Kenya borrowed $3.2 billion at an interest rate of 3.6%, above standard concessional lending rates, with repayment beginning immediately after construction. Kenya's government was so concerned about the terms that it classified the loan contract as a state secret. It took a court order from a Kenyan journalist to partially release the documents. When researchers finally examined them, they found a clause that has since become infamous. In the event of default, Kenya would surrender control of the port of Mombasa, its most strategically vital asset, as collateral. A railroad loan with a port as collateral. The second railroad is the Addis Ababa to Djibouti line in Ethiopia. Same model, Chinese-built, Chinese-financed, Chinese-operated. It connects Ethiopia's landlocked capital to the tiny nation of Djibouti, which sits at the mouth of the Red Sea, one of the most strategically important shipping lanes on the planet. Ethiopia needed the railroad, desperately. But who needed the port at the other end? Now let's connect the dots, because individually, each project sounds defensible. Together, they form a pattern. China needs raw materials, enormous quantities of them, for its factories, its batteries, its construction boom, its export economy. Africa has those raw materials. The DRC has cobalt, Zambia has copper, Guinea has bauxite, Congo-Brazzaville has oil. The problem, historically, was getting those materials out. Africa's colonial-era infrastructure was built to serve colonial ports, not modern economies. Roads were bad. Railways were broken or non-existent. Moving raw materials from the interior to the coast was slow, expensive, and unreliable. China solved that problem with its own money, using its own workers, under its own loan terms. The railroads China builds overwhelmingly run from resource-rich interiors to coastal ports. They are not connecting African cities to each other. They are not building the kind of integrated national rail networks that allow domestic economies to grow. They are, in the bluntest possible terms, extraction corridors, optimized to move raw materials out of the continent efficiently. It is not a conspiracy theory. It is what the routes show on a map. You can draw the line yourself. Now look at Zambia. Zambia is one of the world's largest copper producers. It borrowed heavily from Chinese lenders, state banks, private firms, to fund infrastructure and government spending. By 2020,
Zambia became the first African country to default on its sovereign debt in the COVID era. Its total external debt was approximately $17 billion, a significant portion owed to Chinese creditors. During debt renegotiations, reports emerged that Chinese lenders had taken security interests in Zambia's national electricity utility, its broadcasting infrastructure, and potentially its international airport. Zambia's government denied the most extreme claims, but the fact that these claims were credible enough to require denial tells you something about how these deals are structured. Beat. Compare what happened in Zambia to what happened in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka borrowed Chinese money to build the Hambantota port. It couldn't repay. In 2017, it handed China a 99-year lease on the port. Not a metaphor. An actual century-long lease on sovereign territory to a foreign power. These are not random events. It is what happens when loan terms are written by the lender, in secret, with strategic assets as collateral. Country. What China built. Collateral/outcome. Kenya Standard Gauge Railway, $3.2 billion. Port of Mombasa listed as collateral in loan documents. Zambia Roads, infrastructure loans, $6 billion plus. Default 2020. Utility and airport security interest reported. Sri Lanka, Hambantota Port, 99-year port lease handed to China on default 2017. Djibouti Port plus railroad plus military base. China's only overseas military installation now operational. So, is this neo-colonialism? That word gets thrown around a lot. Let's be precise about what it means and what it doesn't. Colonial infrastructure, the kind Belgium and Britain built in Africa, was explicitly designed to extract resources while providing zero economic benefits to local populations. No technology transfer. No local employment above manual labor. No reinvestment. Pure extraction with violence backing it up. Chinese infrastructure is more complicated. It does get built. The railroads function. The ports operate. Some local workers are employed, though the ratio of Chinese to local workers on major projects has been a consistent point of criticism. Some technology transfer happens. African governments have genuine agency in choosing to accept these deals. They are not occupied territories. But, the loan terms are opaque. The collateral is strategic. The construction contracts go overwhelmingly to Chinese firms. The financing comes from Chinese state banks with geopolitical interests. And the infrastructure, when you trace it on a map, overwhelmingly serves Chinese supply chains rather than African development priorities. That is not colonialism, but it is not charity either. It is a very deliberate economic strategy, and African governments that sign these deals without fully understanding the terms are making a mistake their populations will pay for. There is a counter-argument worth taking seriously. African leaders who accept these deals often say, "Where was the alternative?" The World Bank has conditions. Western governments attach human rights requirements. The IMF demands austerity. China builds, fast, cheaply, and without political lectures. For a leader trying to show constituents visible progress, that offer is hard to refuse. And that is precisely why the burden of scrutiny falls on the deal terms, not on the existence of the deal itself.
Secret contracts with strategic collateral in a continent that has already been extracted from once before. That deserves every question we can ask. China is not building an empire the way empires used to be built, with soldiers and flags. It is building one the way the 21st century works, with contracts, ports, and debt. Whether that is good or bad for Africa depends entirely on whether African governments can read the fine print. So far, the evidence suggests many of them cannot or are not being allowed to.